Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar on embedding Reveal in React and Node.js apps. This is going to be an exciting webinar. I want to thank everyone for attending today. I know you have a lot to do and we really appreciate your time to learn about Reveal. So my name is Jason Barris. I've been at Infragistics for going on 20 years. Infragistics is almost a 35-year-old company. We are a gold certified partner. We're a Google leverage partner. Our products are used in most of the Fortune 500. And what you're going to learn about today is Reveal, which is a product we've had in the market for almost 8, maybe 9 years now. We started with a iPad-only product called Report Plus, and then we morphed it into Reveal. In the email that you received today or maybe yesterday, there was a reminder to watch an overview video of Reveal. I'm not going to go into all of the details of Reveal. We're going to spend most of our time today on how to actually implement Reveal in a React application with Node.js. So we're going to do a quick overview of Reveal. I'm going to show you some resources when I get into the demo. Then we'll get into some code with Node.js and SQL Server. We'll create a React client app, and then we will wrap this up. A little bit of housekeeping, links to code, recording, slide deck will be sent this week. Ask questions in the chat, and we will answer them during today's webinar. And you can get all of the code today at github.com, jbarris Reveal React Node webinar. And that is a React client with a Node.js server. All you need to do is update your host and make sure you have the Northwind database. So how does the Reveal SDK work? The Reveal SDK comes with a client and a server. The client is a JavaScript library, which means it'll work in any JavaScript app, be it React, Angular, Web Components, Vue, Blazor, .NET Core. It doesn't really matter. You embed this Reveal JavaScript client in your application. I'm going to show you how to do that today. We will be using a JavaScript library that's on our CDN. The JavaScript library has all of the capabilities to view, edit, and create dashboards. It's localized into 13 languages. It has capabilities like theming and customization. So anything that you want to do to the client experience, you essentially can through properties, methods, events, or theming. For example, maybe you want users to be able to edit dashboards. Well, that happens by default, but if there's a class of users that shouldn't be able to edit, you can disable editing. Maybe you don't want users to export to Excel or PowerPoint. You can control that through properties. On the server side, again, this is a server package that embeds into your application. So we have a Java server, we have a .NET Core server, and we have a Node.js server. Today I'll be using the Node server, but essentially no matter any type of application that you have built, Reveal will work with. So we even have customers that maybe have a Python backend, but they are using Node for Reveal. So the biggest thing that the server does is it deals with queries to the data layer, to your data source, and it does authorization and authentication. So there are a few functions there that you would use to make all of that happen. With that, let's go ahead and get right into our demo. So with the demo today, what I want to highlight is that all of the resources that I'm going to show you are available online. There's a few places to get information. First, you have the Reveal website. On the Reveal website, if you go to resources, you have blogs, white papers, customer stories, glossary, webinars. We have help, pricing, etc. But if I go to the help page, this is like the entry point for the help. I'm going to go to the Web SDK documentation, and then you'll see that there are getting started guides for different servers and different clients. So today, I'm going to be doing a Node.js server, and I'm going to be doing a React client. I already have my Node server set up, so I'm just going to kind of do a quick overview of that. For the React, we're actually going to go ahead and build it. And what we're going to build looks like this. So it's essentially a simple screen with a menu across the top. There's a drop down that has different dashboards. You'll be able to select a dashboard. It'll load up into your browser. You can click over on the overflow, go into the edit view. So for example, if I want to edit this particular dashboard, I can do that and change the way the dashboard looks, etc. When you click the checkbox, the dashboard will actually save. So this entire round-robin experience of viewing dashboards and editing is part of the client SDK, and you get that for free when you're doing today's code, when you follow along with today's code. And then you're going to learn how to create dashboards. So this is the default create dashboard screen. I'm using SQL Server today, the Northwind database. So for example, if I want to create visualization based off of a view like the orders query, I can go ahead and select the orders query. I'll select this data, and then maybe I want to do something like, let's do country, and we will do maybe freight by country. So now I just did this visualization for freight by country. Let's type in freight by country here as the title, and I'll go to settings. I'm going to disable the legend. We don't need the legend, and that's good enough for me. I can check the box, and now I start creating this dashboard, and when I hit the save, it would actually save. So that's what we're going to build today. All of the code for what you are going to learn is up on the server on GitHub, JBarris React, Reveal React Node webinar. Also at GitHub, if I go to Reveal BI, we have another repo called SDK Samples JavaScript, which also shows you all of the different things that you can do with the Reveal SDK. So it's very easy to say, oh, I want to learn how to do dashboard filtering, or I want to learn how to do exporting images. And if you select one of these guys and you just look at the index.html, or if there's a React sample in there, you'll be able to see how you can actually use functions of the API to get your job done. So everything is up here. And again, remember, I mentioned this is just a JavaScript library. So this is an HTML file because it'll work with any type of app. You don't need a special React library or Angular library to make all this stuff work. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and do the getting started with the Reveal SDK for React. And like I said earlier, I do have a Node server already running. So in the docs, there's a demo or a step-by-step on how to create a Node server. The Node server has a handful of things that you can do to enable Reveal on your server. The first thing is there's a dashboards folder. I already have some pre-built dashboards here, and in another webinar we'll go step by step on how to create the Node server and all the dashboards and stuff, but for today I want to focus on the React side and just have this already pre-built. So the first thing I did here was I added a API call to get the dashboards in the dashboards folder. And then, of course, that is how we are populating this combo box. So this combo box is populated from this API call. So I'm just getting the files in the directory, and that's basic. Has nothing to do with Reveal, but it'll help out our app. Now, the next things do have something to do with Reveal. So there's a few steps here. The first one is the authentication provider. The authentication provider is where you pass your credentials to the type of data source that you're using. In this case, I'm using an RV SQL Server data source. SQL Server asks for a username and password, so this is where I would pass my credentials to the data layer so I can connect to the data source. If you're using Snowflake or Redshift or Athena, you would use the RV Athena data source, the RV Snowflake data source. So based on what you're using, you're going to pass the credentials there. In our docs, we have different ways of doing that based on the data sources. The second thing is you're going to set up your data provider. In this case, I'm using the Northwind database, and I'm using an instance of the SQL Server data source. You can have multiple data sources in dashboards. It doesn't matter. In this case, we're just using SQL Server. So I have my SQL Server data source, and I'm passing it the host name and the database. This host name you would add as your own. This I've obfuscated for, so you don't see my host name. But essentially, it is a server here at the office. Step 3, I am adding my data source items. So I have a data source, and then I have data source items. If you recall back on the Create Dashboard screen, when I clicked plus visualization, I had a data source, and then these are considered data source items. So a data source item is essentially a way to curate a list of tables, views, etc. that your users are able to see. That way, when they're creating dashboards and they click plus visualization, they can just go right into this experience. If I'm offering them a data source, it will give me all of the options available for that data source, like all the tables, views, stored procedures, etc. You can filter this out to also give a curated list, but just setting up data source items is a little bit easier. So that's how that works in your application. So you can see here, I'm checking like if the ID coming in is customer order history, I want to use this stored procedure. If it's customer order orders, I want to use this stored procedure. If it's customer orders, I just want to use a custom query. So this is what you would be doing with data source items. And this is what's unique about Reveal. You have complete control over what's happening with your data sources and data source items. And then finally, I'm just setting up my Reveal options here. So we have this Reveal options, and I want it to use the authentication provider, the data source provider, the data source item provider, my local storage path, which is data. In this case, I have an Excel spreadsheet that I'm using to populate some data. And then I will initialize Reveal, and then I will start the Node server. So this Node server is already started. Very easy to set this up, and all this code is up in GitHub. So let's go ahead and start using our documentation to create our React app. And in this case, we're going to create a getting started app using TypeScript. We're going to add the JavaScript dependencies, and then we are going to create those individual screens for viewing dashboards and loading dashboards, etc. So the first thing that I'm going to do is open a new instance of Visual Studio Code, and I am going to do a new terminal. Let's close this guy out. And in my new terminal, I'm going to change to C:\dev reveal. And in dev reveal, I am simply going to copy this, and we are going to paste it in. So create React app getting started, and we're going to call this React 2-getting started. So this will just go ahead and create the default React app. It'll install all the dependencies, and then we'll go ahead and install a couple other dependencies that we need to make this guy work correctly. So there's two things that we want to install when this is done. We're going to install the React Router DOM, and we're going to install React Bootstrap, and that will give us some of the things that we need. And that's really all we need for the client. We're going to be using the global CDN of Infragistics for the Reveal dependencies. So let's change over to our React 2-getting started. npm install React Router DOM. And then we'll do an npm install React Bootstrap. And let's do an npm start. And we'll see that we have our default React app, which is, oh yeah, we'll run this on another port. We'll just say, yes, I have the other app running. So there we go. This is our localhost 3001, and this is our default React app, which you've probably seen many times if you've done React. So let's just go ahead. We will minimize this guy, and we will start to look at what we have for this app. So let's do a Control-C, and we're going to do a code dot, and we'll just open this in Visual Studio Code, close this guy out, and what we'll also do is my app that I have running, I'm going to go ahead and kill that app. I don't need it running any longer. Let's go ahead and start pulling this together to build out our applications. First thing what we're going to do in index.html is we are going to add some JavaScript dependencies and script dependencies that we need. In the docs, you will learn that there are a few dependencies that we need to make all of this come together. The first one is jQuery, the second one is Day.js, Quill.js, and then this is the Reveal library that I mentioned earlier. So it's up on our CDN. When you are building your app yourself, you're probably not going to use our CDN because then you don't get IntelliSense and all the other good things inside of Reveal. You would download the SDK installer on our website, and then that will have the TypeScript typings and the JS file, and you would add it to your JS here. The second thing that I want to do, or maybe the fourth thing because of my dependencies, is I want to use one of the Reveal settings, the SDK settings, called set base URL. Set base URL is pointing to my Reveal server. So if I go back to my server here, and let's scroll down, you'll notice that we started this on localhost 5111. So 5111 is where all of these functions exist. So I need to tell Reveal to actually point there. So we'll use our URL in a couple different places. And then finally, there is a CSS dependency that we need. So we can put this right up here. And this is for Quill.js. The reason we use Quill.js is we have some dialogues where you can enter in functions and whatnot in Reveal for custom fields. And Quill.js does that for us. So now the second thing that we want to do is we want to look at a couple files. So we've got index.ts and we've got app.tsx. So you'll notice that I've got my app in my root.render, but what I want to do is I want to wrap this inside of browser router. So in this case, I want to open up the browser router like so, and app needs to be inside of browser router like this. So now we will be able to use the React Router DOM, which we installed earlier. So that's kind of how routing will work. If you don't have that, you'll get some errors during the compilation. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to update app.tsx. We want to get rid of this whole div area, and this will be where our routes live for the application. But the first thing that I'm going to do is add a couple components, or actually 3 components that we're going to build in this application. So in the source folder, I'm going to add a new folder. And then inside components, I'm going to add 3 components. The first one's going to be header.tsx. The second one is going to be called view dashboard.tsx. And the third one, you might have guessed, will be called create dashboard. So these are 3 things that we are going to build today. So for header, what we're going to do is we're going to add the things that we need at the top of the screen. So we're going to have that black bar, and we're going to have the buttons that are going to show exactly what we want to display. So I'm not going to go too heavily into that. So I'm just going to take from over one of my cheat sheets, and I'm going to paste this in, because all this is a bunch of divs and stuff to create a header. One of the things I did for this demo is I'm going to be using code snippets a lot. I just did a quick copy paste, but code snippets are a really nice feature of Visual Studio Code. So over in my GitHub repo, if we go back to what's available for today's webinar, I've got snippets.txt, and you can see here are all of the code snippets that you have for today's webinar. And I took everything out of the docs and all my samples, and I created this. So we're not going to really type a lot of code today, but you're going to see how things get pulled together, and you can use these code snippets too when you're building out your application. So the code snippets make everything really, really easy. So now I've got my header.tsx, and in my app.tsx, this area here, so what we're going to do is return this div. So we're going to render a bunch of stuff in this div that's going to go back, and it's going to be our main screen. So I want to delete what's there now, and I'm going to add in exactly what we want to return. So in this case, I'm going to paste this in, and oh, I got a couple extra returns. I'm going to go ahead and delete those because we don't need them. And I have my header, and I have my routes, and I have in my routes, I have 3 routes. I've got create dashboard, which is create dashboard. I've got view dashboard, and I've got header. In order for all of this to work, we need to add our import statement. So I've got an import for my routes. I need an import for Bootstrap, and then we need to import our actual headers. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and import those guys. And you can see here, I've got import route from routes, or import route and routes from React Router DOM, which is what we added. I'm using Bootstrap, and I've got my header, and I've got create dashboard and view dashboard. Now, right now, the problem with create dashboard and view dashboard is they're not components. There's nothing in them. Header is a component, and so it has an export. So it's going to export this header, and you've got the header constant. So the React compiler, or the compiler, knows that, okay, this is an actual component. It's legal. It's okay to use. These two are not. So for now, we're going to start with create dashboard. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to comment out view dashboard, and I'm going to comment out view dashboard here. So now those are both commented out, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on the create dashboard component. And keep in mind, I have code snippets for all of this, so this is going to be pretty easy and it'll go pretty quick. So my prefix for a lot of the code snippets is RR, RV, or DS. So when you type in RR, you're going to see a bunch of different things that pop up that you're going to be able to use to build out these screens. So the first thing is we need the base component for create dashboard. So what that did is it created our create dashboard, and it exported the create dashboard. So if we go back to app.tsx, now you can see that these things actually exist and they are legit. So let's go back up here. There's a few other things that we need. We are using jQuery, so we need to tell it that the $ is legal as well. So in create dashboard, we want to say declare let $ can be anything. You know, we don't really care, but we're going to let it not be typed. So then in our create dashboard, we want to use the React function use effect, which means this will load up once when the component is mounted or when the page is refreshed. So in RR, we've got our use effect in create dashboard. Inside use effect is where we actually start building out the reveal view and what we need to render all of the things to do the dashboard creation. You can see here that my Copilot is trying to tell me what I need. But what the first thing that I want to do is I want to create the reveal view. And when I create the reveal view, I'm going to tell the reveal view to actually start in edit mode. So I'm going to do a new reveal view, and then I'm going to tell it to start in edit mode. So what this does is it says, we're going to need something called reveal view, and I want you to start in edit mode. The reveal view, $IG reveal view, so this is invoking something from the SDK, needs to be the reveal view object. So what is the reveal view object? The reveal view object is a div that we're actually going to just create on our screen to render out. So this is the reveal view. The way that reveal works is the dashboards are just simply rendered into a div. So this div is where the dashboard is actually going to live. So that gives you the core of what you need to do dashboard creation. The reveal view, tell it to start in edit mode, then the div. Now we need to use a callback which will tell Reveal that it needs to use certain data sources or data source items that you've set up on the server. So this callback is called onDataSourceRequested. So what I want to do is add my onDataSourceRequested callback, which is a reveal view onDataSourceRequested, and then it will populate the dialog with the data sources that you are requesting. In this case, I'm going to request the full SQL Server Northwind database, and I'm going to request those 4 curated items that I added before. So let's do our full SQL Server database, like so, and we'll do a quick code format here to make it look prettier. And you can see that I've got my SQL Server. This is the name of my host. SQL Server data source will be the title, and the subtitle will be the full Northwind database. And once I add these data source items, you can see I've got a SQL Server data source and it's calling a new IGRV SQL Server data source, which if you remember is what we also created on our Node server. I need to tell this callback that I want it to populate in the dialog. So I'm going to grab my SQL Server data source and I'm going to say make sure that this shows up. There's two arrays here that this Reveal data sources accepts. One are the data sources and the second is the data source items. So if we go to terminal, we'll do a new terminal and we'll do an npm start and we'll take a look at what this does at this point. So it's going to load up our React app. It says module not found, can't resolve bootstrap, blah, blah, blah. View dashboard can't be compiled because it's considered a global script file. Add an import, export, or empty export statement. So let's go ahead and fix these guys here in our view dashboard. I think if we just add this export like so, that might work. No issues found. So far, let's see if that helped our compilation. And it looks like Bootstrap is now violating something here, and that is in getting started source. So maybe, did we not do that correctly? Let me do a Control-C, terminate, npm install React - bootstrap here. And maybe that wasn't installed correctly. So let's try this again. npm start. And we are loading up again. Let's close our broken one. And this should have our header. Yep. And nothing's happening here yet. I'm going to go ahead and hit create dashboard. Now I have the default Reveal view with create dashboard. And when I click plus visualization, I've got the full SQL Server Northwind database with all of the stuff that you saw earlier. So for example, if I go to the marketing campaign performance and select this table, I can grab the campaign, I can grab the conversions, and right there I have all of the conversions by campaign. That's how easy it is. I mean, we just did this in 10 minutes, even with a bug, to get dashboard creation going with Reveal. We added this create dashboard component, we added a few lines of code, and like magic it just works. Now what I want to do is add those curated items that we had earlier. So I have my curated items, and all we're doing is following a very similar pattern here. This was SQL Server data source is an IGRV SQL Server data source. This is a SQL Server data source item, which is a new IGRV SQL Server data source item, and I'm passing it this data source. So it's using this server definition here to create the data source item. And then if you recall, on my Node server, I said if the ID equals customer orders, if it equals customer order history, I want to do like a certain stored procedure or whatever. So that's how I am associating or differentiating what I want to do on the server based on what is here on the client. So how do I get these to show up? I'm going to copy these over and start adding them to my second array. So I had SQL Server data source 1, I had 2, I have 3, and I have 4. So now this is saved. Let's go and rerun this. And you'll see that I have my 4 items here. So if I do 10 most expensive products, I can grab this, and your user then can go ahead and create dashboards. So I'm going to close this guy out. I'm going to leave it right there and click the checkbox. And I'm going to add one more visualization. Let's go to our full database. And let's take a look at revenue and profitability. Revenue and profitability, I can do something like, revenue by company, like so, and very quickly do a dashboard. But what I want to do is something a little cooler. I'm going to go ahead and do a map. And in my map, I want to use the US states. So there's my US states. And it's not going to be company. The location is going to be state. And just like that, I've got revenue by state, like so. And what else do we want to change here? Maybe we can go to settings. Let's change the map color to orange as the primary, and you can see that our legend is giving us the choropleth colors. So I check this box. I'm going to give this new dashboard a name. We're going to call it Webinar Dashboard, like so. And I'm going to click Save, and now that is saved. So what just happened? If we go back to our Node server, and I go to my Dashboards folder, there is Webinar Dashboard. This is the RDash file. It's essentially a zipped JSON file. What we're doing is we are looking for a folder named Dashboards to load and save dashboards to automatically. The SDK does that automatically for you. You don't have to worry about where to save things. If you want to override this, you have an API in the SDK to do that. So everything that we're doing here, you can customize and override yourself with your own code. We give you all of the capability to do that with the SDK. But now, how do we load this webinar dashboard? Well, actually, if you remember, let's go back to our API here. We've got this get dashboards, and that's going to get all the dashboards in this folder, populate them into that combo box, and then display them. We need to do that to our app. So let's go ahead to our application. I don't need to mess around with create dashboard anymore. I need to mess around with view dashboard. So let's start building out RV. So I need the base component. This is just like we did before. I've got my view dashboard. I'm going to use state, and I'm going to use effect here. We're using jQuery, so $any, and then this is the URL to the API that I'm going to need to load up my dashboards. So inside of view dashboards, I need a couple things. I need some arrays to hold the dashboards from the list that I'm going to pull in, and then to sort of manage the state. So in this case, I'm going to do my use effect to load the dashboards into the Reveal view, which we're not quite there yet. I didn't add that yet, but we'll add that in 1 second. And then the next thing that I want to do is use effect to get all of the dashboards from the array. So here we have use effect. What am I going to do? I'm going to fetch from this URL all of the dashboards, and then I'm going to put those dashboards in an array called dashboards. What is the name of that array? So let's go ahead and do our RV again, and let's create our arrays and state management. So I'll do a little formatting there, and you can see that the first thing that I want to do is load up the campaigns dashboard, and then inside the dashboards array, I am going to store all of the dashboards that I'm getting from this URL. If we look at this URL, you can see what it's going to return from our server. And I have a little error here. You'll note it says 56565. That's not actually the URL that I want. I want 5111. I must have changed it. And you can see here in 5111, there's our webinar dashboard. So it's actually pretty darn nice. So I'll minimize this. We're going to change this to 5111 so it works correctly when we run it at runtime. And you can see we're still compiling here. Everything looks like it's working as it should. So we've got our dashboards. We're going to stick them inside of a div called Reveal View. And so the next thing that we really need to do is create that div and create that combo box. So in this case, we have the return for the array, or rather the HTML that's actually going to render. So let's do our RV, and we will do our return, and I will format this very quickly like so. And what did we just do? I've got a div with an H3 that says load dashboard. I have an HTML select. The HTML select is going to use the dashboard array and populate the list with the dashboard name and index from the array. And then on change, it is going to change the dashboard to the target value of the selected item, and that will then tell it to load into the Reveal view, which means we will be loading the dashboard that is selected from the item. What is the Reveal view? It is exactly the same thing that we added to our create dashboard. So you can see here it's just a simple div, and that div is what's going to be loaded in the Reveal view. So that's kind of how things tie together. It's very simple. You've got the Reveal SDK library, which is just looking for a div, and there's a lot of code that you could write for that library, but essentially it's just a couple lines of code to say in the Reveal view div, populate it with this dashboard. And you could hard code this as well. So if I said Reveal view dashboard is dashboard, that's fine, but this dashboard could be just called sales. And if I just had the word sales here, then it would just load up sales. So I believe we are good to go here. Let's go back to our app.tsx and let's uncomment out these guys here. Let's uncomment out our routes. And this should now all work just like we showed at the beginning of the demo. Let me go ahead and go back to our app. Let's do a quick refresh. And I'm on the create dashboard. Let me go to view dashboards. There you go. We loaded up campaigns by default. I've got my drop down here of different dashboards. These dashboards are actually using that Excel file. So when you download this, it'll work right away. And then my webinar dashboard is what I just created with create dashboard. Now this is what is so amazing about Reveal. If I select the overflow and I go to edit and I add a new visualization, I've got dev test, which is the name of my full Northwind database. Then I have my full Northwind database. This is actually giving me what's available already in this dashboard. But let's say I want to do something different. Let me go to views. Let's go back to orders query, and I'll select this, and I can add now another visualization. Let's do freight by city. But this is going to be the sum. I'm going to select this and I want to do average freight by city. So it's now average. I'm going to change this to average freight by city. Hit the checkbox, and now I've got a chart here. This chart, maybe I want to change it to something different. I can edit this again, go to the chart selector, and let's do something like a spline area. And I'll check this box and check the box, and now webinar dashboard is updated. It looks beautiful, and I am off to the races. So I can just continue to edit dashboards, create dashboards, etc. The load and save will automatically happen because we're looking for that dashboards folder. And there you have it. With a few lines of code, we created a new React app that created dashboards from SQL Server based on the full database and some curated items. We did a view dashboard screen, which will let me select dashboards and load them into the Reveal view. And we did a very simple header. This code now you can literally copy paste into your own React app. It can just be reused. You might want to show your dashboards on other screens or whatever, but the pattern is identical. Essentially, you are loading into a Reveal view a dashboard, and that Reveal view is essentially a div, so this is really the only code that you need. Now, if we went back to our GitHub repo, not my sample repo, but let's go back to the Reveal BI repo here. Let me type in Reveal BI, and I go to the samples SDK JavaScript, and if we look at getting started, and I look at the client, let's just go to the HTML client, index.html. You can see this is all you need to do to get started, to get into that new dashboard state, and then I would add those data source items from my server. So again, very easy to get started with Reveal, and hopefully you see this coming together here. And just so you know, this is very approachable. You can jump up on the docs or grab the repo from the URL that I have in the deck, and we'll send that out in the email as well, so you can get started with Reveal, React, and Node.js yourself. So let's go ahead and wrap this up now. Hopefully you see that Reveal is your only choice for embedded BI. We created simple and beautiful dashboards, maybe in a 15-20 minute code session. I showed how easy it was to do the load and the save, and then even a little header with a drop down. And you can really then take this and empower your own users to do self-service in their own apps. All of this capability exists in the SDK. with no additional coding on your own. So with that, I want to thank everyone for joining today. I know everyone is very busy, and I appreciate your time. And again, we will be following up with emails and links in the next day or so you can use this or share it with your colleagues. Thanks again.